Masechet Moed Katan Daf Yod Zayin. We're going to begin with some more fascinating stories about people who were excommunicated, and then we'll go back to the Mishnah about more cases of people who are permitted or not permitted to shave on Chol HaMoed, cut their hair on Chol HaMoed. Okay, we start off just finishing off in Agadah. We mentioned that David HaMelech was very humble when he studied Torah, but very strong when he went out as a warrior. And for example, he was so mighty that he could throw one arrow in the air and kill 800 people. And nevertheless, he would sigh because the pasuk said that that one person really potentially could kill 1,000 people, and he only killed 800. He says, "Oh, he was a little upset that he was missing those 200 from there." But what's the reason? And here's what we're up to. The reason why he only killed 800 and not 1,000 was because of the matter of Uriah HaChiti, that he sent him to the front line and basically had him killed. And that way and then he married his wife Bathsheba. So because of that sin, that's why he was not able to kill 1,000. All right, and now we get to another story about more laws about nidui. Amar Rabbi Tanchum bered Rabbi Chia ish kefar Akko. Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha. Amar Rabbi Simlai. Bamri la Amar Rabbi Tanchum Amar Rav Huna. Okay, so we have various attributions for the following statement that says, Talmid shenida lichvodo niduyo nidui. A student that was mentioned yesterday who bans someone because of his own honor, some kind of personal insult. The student is permitted to ban that person. The Tanya, how do we know that? From this braita that we quoted yesterday, someone who is banned by the teacher, the student has to abide by that ban also and not relate to that person. However, if a student bans someone, then the student's teacher does not have to abide by the ban, because a student is under the authority of the rabbi. So if the rabbi bans someone, the student has to listen, but not the other way around. Now, now we infer from this that that student's rabbi does not have to pay attention to the ban, but other people do. Everyone else does. The rabbi doesn't have to because he's above the student, and so he can decide for himself. But it does apply to other people. So now, what kind of case would this be? It doesn't say why the student bans someone. If it's talking about a heavenly matter, meaning there was some person that violated a halacha, and then that student saw that and said, "Oh, you have to be under a ban because you violated the halacha." In that case, everyone would have to abide by the ban, even the teacher, because pasuk says there is no wisdom, understanding, or counsel against Hashem. Meaning, when it comes to matters of heavenly respect, everyone has to listen. There's no excuses. And so if the student, properly made a ban because this person is a sinner against Shamayim, then the rabbi would have to abide by it also. So what would be a case where a student would ban someone and his rabbi does not have to abide by the ban? That would only be a case where the student bans someone because that person insulted the student. So, okay, it's appropriate to give the ban. And that would apply to most people, but the teacher doesn't have to abide by that. The teacher is not obligated in the respect of the student, and so therefore that's a proof that yes, a student is permitted to give a ban for a personal insult. Amar Rav Yosef. Furthermore, Rav Yosef says that a Torah scholar is allowed to ban someone on his own. In other words, he doesn't have to go to a bet din and say, "Hey, this is the case." If he's sure about this matter and this person did something bad that's worthy, then a sage can ban someone independently. That's interesting. Now we have a fascinating story. It's a pretty long story. And so there was a certain Torah scholar who had a bad reputation. We don't know the name of this person. We don't know exactly what he did. From the continuation, it sounds like some kind of sexual impropriety. And so there was a rumor about him, the reputation that his behavior is not so good. Amar Rav Yehuda, hechi le'avid, l'shamte, sirichi le'rabanan, la l'shamte, kamitchil shema dishmaya. And so the rabbis got together. Rav Yosef says, what should we do with him? Should we excommunicate him? It's a problem because the sages need him. He's a great Torah authority. He's an expert in many matters. And, we go and discuss things with him. If we excommunicate him, actually, technically, we did see before that you could study with someone who's excommunicated. But the point is, he's not going to be around and he's not going to be involved in cases. And we need him. However, if we don't excommunicate him, then that will cause a Hillul Hashem because his behavior is very bad, and people are going to know about it, and this is going to harm the reputation of the whole of Hashem of the Torah, that someone who represents Torah has this bad behavior. So they were debating this. Amar le-Rabba bar Chana, midi shemiya alach beha. Rav Yehuda asked his colleague, Rabba bar Chana, do you have a tradition about this? Do you have any advice? Amar le, hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan, may dichtiv ki siftei kohen yishmeru da'at ve'torah yibakshu mepihu ki malach Adonai sebaot tu. A famous pasuk in Malachi. That this pasuk teaches that the role of kohanim is not only to as butchers making sacrifices in the Bet HaMikdash. Actually, that's part of their role, but they are also the guardians of knowledge and of Torah, and you should seek Torah from them because they are like God's angels. Kohanim are God's messengers for Torah knowledge. So really the Kohanim are not only serve in the Mishkan Bet HaMikdash, but also they are the teachers of Torah. Now, why does it say that Kohen is like an angel? Im domeh harav lemalach Adonai yivakashu Torah mepiv. Im lav al yivakashu Torah mepiv. To teach you that, well, in the Peshat, I think it just means they're a messenger. Malach is anyone who's a messenger. But here it's saying, no, like an angel. If a teacher is like an angel, pure and perfect in their behavior, then you should ask Torah from them and ask them questions. But if not, if there's something negative about them, then do not learn from them. That was the advice of Rabbi Yochanan. And so based on that advice, Shamteh Rav Yehuda. There you go. Although this person, whatever his name is, was a great scholar and he knew a lot of things and they relied on him. But you know what? Rabbi Yochanan says he's not pure. So he's not he's not angelic, and so we're going to lose out on his Torah. But so be it. And so he was excommunicated. Okay, l'sofi chalash Rav Yehuda. Eventually, sometime later, Rav Yehuda was sick. And then the rabbis came to visit him, bikur cholim. And this person who was banned also came to visit Rav Yehuda. Perhaps he still wanted to have a good relationship. Maybe he wanted to get the ban undone. Maybe felt bad that he was sick. And so he came to visit. When Rav Yehuda saw the person enter, he gave a kind of mocking laugh at the excommunicated sage. So the ostracized scholar says, it's not enough that you excommunicated me, now you're laughing at me too, right? After all, he's actually coming to visit that Rav Yehuda when he's sick. Rav Yehuda says, I'm not laughing at you. Rather, Rav Yehuda knew that he's on his deathbed, and he says, I'm laughing because I'm happy, because I'm about to die. I'm going to go to the next world, and I will be able to boast that I was not flattered. I did not accept flattery, even from someone great like you. In other words, I took this bold step of excommunicating you, even though you're a great sage, and I didn't give in to the other side we said before. Oh, he's a great sage. We need him. Let's let him go. I mean, this unfortunately, this is a kind of contemporary issue where an organization or something will kind of look over the bad deeds of someone in a leadership position because they're afraid of their reputation and it's an important person. And so you see in this story, Rav Yehuda does not give in to that and says, no, you did something wrong. And no matter how great you are and what a good person, what a knowledgeable person you are, nevertheless, I'm not going to accept that flattery just because of who you are. And so he was laughing, confident in his decision and knowing that will serve him well in the next world. Nach nafshe de Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda indeed died. So that ostracized scholar came to the Bet Midrash and said, Shiruli, now can you release me? All right, I have been banned for long enough. And the rabbis there said, we don't have anybody who's as great as Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Remember, we said yesterday that if if a rabbi bans someone, he dies, then it's not automatically undone. Rather, you have to go and find a sage that's at least as great as him in order to undo the ban. It's sorry, we don't have anybody here as great as Rabbi Yehuda. So you know what? Go to, this is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's grandson, and he's the Nasi, and he's worthy. He has that prestige that he could undo it. And ask him if he would undo the ban. So this ostracized scholar goes to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi'ah. And so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi'ah delegates the responsibility to the Rabbi Ameh. So Rabbi Ameh, go investigate the matter, see what this guy is, see what he did, see maybe he made teshuvah, and if you think he should be released from the ban, then release him. You deal with it. Good. Ayin Rabbi Ameh bedineh. So Rabbi Ameh looked into it. He said, I think it's worthy that the ban should be undone. He feels bad. He made teshuvah. Amad Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachman he al raglav ve'amad uma shivcha shel bet Rabbi lo nahagu chachamim kalut rosh bedniduya shalosh shanim Yehuda chaverenu al achat kama v'chama. So Rabbi Ameh wanted to release him from the ban, but another sage who was there, he happened to be there that day, Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani, stands up on his feet and says, even the maidservant in the house of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi one time banned someone. We'll see that story in a minute. And the rabbis were so serious, took that so seriously, they kept that ban upon that person for 3 years. So all the more so, Rabbi Yehuda, our colleague, should be greater than the servant in the maidservant in the Rabbi's house, right? We have to continue the ban, and no, we cannot release it for at least 3 years. And I don't know how long it was at this time, but it was less than that. He says, no, it's not time to release this person. We've got to keep going. So now you have two scholars, Rabbi Ameh and this Rabbi Shemuel. Rabbi Ameh says, release him. Rabbi Shemuel says, don't. Rabbi Zera says, this Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani, he never comes to the Bet Midrash, but he came today of all days. So this is a sign. He hasn't come here for many years. He's been studying somewhere else. This is a sign from heaven that we are not supposed to be releasing him, that he came today and gave this opinion. So they agreed not to release the person. And so they did not release him, and that ostracized scholar walked out in tears. I mean, you can see from here how serious this is being ostracized is. The whole community would not talk to the person. It's very, very serious. Okay, in the end, a wasp came. Even a picture of a wasp came and stung him on his private member, and he died. So now that he died, they wanted to. He suffered. Now let's try to bury him in the place where Hasidim are buried, but that grave site would not accept him. Maybe like a snake blocked the entrance, and it was a sign that no, he's not worthy of being buried with the Hasidim. So they took him to the caves where the judges were buried, and that cave accepted him. So it's interesting that they had within the cemetery different levels of righteousness, and so he fit into the Dayanim. Okay, my Tama, why? How come that cave accepted him? Davad could it be Eli? Because even though he did sin in some way, but he did it not in a terrible way. As Rabbi Eli suggests, Tanya Rabbi Eli Omer, אם רואה אדם שאיסרו מתגבר עליו, ילך למקום שאין מכירים אותו, וילבש שחורים, ויתעטף שחורים, ויעשה מה שליבו חפץ, ואל יחלל שם שמיים, ופרהס יה. Rabbi Eli said, if a person sees that his evil inclination is getting the best of him, and he can't control it, so he should go to a foreign place where no one recognizes him, and dress in black, and maybe just being there and being like in the state of mourning, maybe he'll refrain from doing it. But even if not, he'll go there where nobody knows him, and he'll do the act that he can't control himself, and so do it privately where nobody knows him, and then come back. And rather than do it in public where that would cause a greater Hillul Hashem. And so this sage, although he sinned, but he did it in a discreet manner, and therefore he deserved the ban his whole life, and he was killed by a wasp. So it's still really terrible. But because he was sensitive to Chilul Hashem, therefore he does deserve not to be buried with the Hasidim, but at least with the judges. Okay, so that's the end of that really interesting story. And now, since we mentioned the Shivcha Shel Bet Rabbi, Maihi, that there was a maidservant in the house of Rabbi who banned someone. What was that story about? Here it is. So the maidservant in Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's house saw a man who hit his adult son. The adult son, I don't know, did something, didn't pay attention, didn't listen to the father, and he saw the father hit this adult son. Amra, levehu gabra b'shamta. And so the maidservant said, this father should be banned because he is violating, don't put a stumbling block before a blind person. Why would this be a stumbling block? Because the adult son, he's not going to just sit there and take a hit from his father. He's going to punch back and defend himself. And then, so the father is causing the son to hit back, and when the son does that, he'll be violating Makeh Aviv Imo, which is a very stringent transgression. And therefore, the father should not do that, should not start up with an adult son. All right, if the father feels the need to hit a child, a kid, that's one thing, right? The kid's not going to hit back. Maybe he needs to learn an important lesson, not to run into the street. But for an adult son, no, that's not the way to deal with it. In fact, the Braita says explicitly that someone, a father who hits an adult son is violating, put a stumbling block before a blind person. And that's why this guy was put into cherem by the maidservant, and the rabbis accepted and abided by that ban. All right. Now, Resh Lakish, another story. Resh Lakish was guarding an orchard, even though Resh Lakish was a great Amorah of the generation, but this was his day job. He would guard an orchard for payment. Maybe he could learn Torah while he's sitting there guarding. And sure enough, while he's guarding it, some guy comes and starts eating from the figs in this orchard. Lakish starts yelling at him, "Get out of here. This is private property. This is not yours. You're stealing." And the guy didn't listen. He kept stealing, eating the figs. So Resh Lakish says, "May you be excommunicated." Okay. This guy, the thief, says, "No, the opposite. You should be excommunicated, Resh Lakish." Okay. This guy has really some chutzpah. The thief says, "Okay, if I'm liable for payment, I accept, right? Whatever I ate, I will pay for, but I don't deserve excommunication. And because you excommunicated me without improperly, therefore you're the one that deserves the excommunication." Okay, so that's the story. Now, so Resh Lakish came to the study hall and told them this is what happened. And the study hall, his colleague said, "Amar le shelo nidui shelecha eno nidui." The colleagues took the thief's side, amazingly, and they said, "When the thief's ostracism of you is valid, and your banning of him is invalid, because yes, you were the guard and you're supposed to stop him, and now you're a witness, so you'll bring him to court. He did it already." And so bring him to a court and he'll pay. There was no need for the banning. And in fact, because you did that, he was right in banning you in return. Okay, so then Resh Lakish says, "Oh no, now I'm excommunicated. I want to get out of it. How can I fix this?" So you have to go to that person. Can you imagine? Resh Lakish has to go to this low-life thief and say, "I'm sorry, can you please release me from the ban?" And so he would even go and do that. But he didn't know who the thief was. He didn't get a good look at him. He didn't get his name. And so he's banned by someone and he doesn't even know. What do you do in that case? So go to the Nasi. The Nasi is the representative of all of the people, and so he has the authority to undo a ban even by anybody, that even if someone that you don't know. We have a baraita that teaches precisely that. If someone puts you under a ban and you don't know who it is, you go to the Nasi, and the Nasi has the authority to undo the ban. Okay, fantastic story. Amar Rav Huna be'usha etkinu av betin shesarach en menadin oto ela omer lo hikabed b'she bebetecha chazav v'sarach menadin oto mipnei Hillul Hashem. Okay, it's back to the balance that we have. On the one hand, we don't want to publicize a bad thing that someone great does. It could cause Hillul Hashem and look bad on the whole organization. On the other hand, if you really want to cleanse the organization, then publicize it and get rid of that guy. And so that, that's the best way to not cause the Hillul Hashem, not to have bad people around. So this is exactly the case here. If you have an Av Betin, he's the head of the Betin, and he sinned. Whatever he did, something wrong, we do not ban him. Rather, we tell him, just keep your honor and stay at home. In other words, we ask him to resign on his own, and that way, he won't have the job, and we don't have to publicly humiliate him and bring shame upon the office and Chillul Hashem. So hopefully he'll resign quietly and leave. But if he doesn't, and if he sins again, then we do put him in nidui, even if he's av betin, right? We don't give in to flattery and say, oh, he's an important person. No, because when people find out the bad thing he did, then they'll say, this is what av betin, and that'll cause desecration of God's name. And therefore, if needed, we even will ban a chief justice. Ufeliga deresh lakish. This is against Resh Lakish. Tamar Resh Lakish. Tamir Cham Sarach en menedinoto befares Yashnemar bechashata hayom bechashal gam navi mecha layla kasehu kalayla. Resh Lakish was more protective, and he said if a Torah scholar sins, then we should not ban him in public, as the pasuk says. Therefore, shall you fall in the day, and the prophet shall also fall with you in the night. And if there's someone who is a navi and falls and sins, it should be in the night, meaning it should be concealed, like in the night, and don't ban him in public. Rather, fire him, have him resign, but do it in private in order not to bring public shame. Mozutra Hasida, ki mechayav sobam Rabbanan shamta, beresha meshamet nafshe, v'adan meshamet ledideh. Is very interesting that Mozutra Hasida, when he saw that there was a certain Torah scholar who was deserving of excommunication, and so what he would do is he would excommunicate himself first, and then excommunicate that person. In other words, you want to try to empathize. How do you give a message? We know this from the famous story of the Oven Abachnai. When the rabbis got together and they decided Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, he is excommunicated. Who's going to go tell him? He's a great rabbi. So Rabbi Akiva says, I'll tell him. And Rabbi Akiva, he dresses in black and sits on the floor next to Rabbi Eliezer. And the Rabbi says, what's going on? He says, I think your friends have excommunicated you. And so you see, Rabbi Akiva does precisely this. He doesn't say there he officially excommunicates himself, but he does act as if he himself is excommunicated. And so this would be a respectful way of giving someone this bad news, by putting yourself also in that place and saying, I am with you, right? I feel bad for you, even though you deserve this excommunication. So he would ban himself first and then ban the other person. And then when he went home, that same sage, Mozutra, he would release himself from his ban, and then he would release the other person from that ban. And that way he was able to fulfill excommunicating a Torah scholar who deserved it, but he did it in a respectful way, and so that the person would not be overly shamed. Amar Rav Gidel Amar Rav Tamid Chacham menadel asmo mefel asmo. And Rav in fact said that a sage can ban himself and release himself from the ban. Amar Rav Papa Teti. We did see those stories yesterday of various rabbis when they realized that they insulted someone else, they would they put shame upon themselves for 7 days, 30 days, right? So this would be something similar. Papa says, I deserve a pat on the back because I never banned another sage ever. So now we ask, so what if someone was deserving, right? You can't just let sins go. Right? What did you do when someone was deserving of a ban? This is kiha de b'ma'araba mimnu anegida de sumer banan v'la mimnu ashamta. This is what I did. I did what they do in Eretz Yisrael. That they appoint someone to give the person lashes. A traskala who's deserving, give them lashes, and rather than ostracize him. In other words, lashes is preferable, even though it's very painful. But okay, you do it, you get it over with, and it's more private. And that was a better way of preserving the public person from public shame rather than an ostracism. My shamta. Now we ask, what does this word shamta mean? Amarav sham mita. There is death. That even though we're not killing the person, but it's kind of a social death, and almost wishing the person would die through this curse, because it involves a curse too, as we're going to see in a second. Where Shemuel says the word shamta comes from shemama, meaning it's desolation, destroyed. And when a person is excommunicated, it's similar to fat smeared on an oven. If you put fat on an oven, that grease, even though you can clean it, it never fully comes out. It's like a permanent stain. And so too, an excommunication, even if you release the person from excommunication, there's still that reputation. He's never going to be 100%, right? Even if he's released, you say, oh, remember he was excommunicated, and the person has to kind of live with that stain forever. That's what Shemuel says. But that disagrees with Feliga de Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish disagrees with Resh Lakish. Keshem shenichneset b-248 barim, kach sheshi yosa b-248 evarim. He says, just like when someone is excommunicated, enters into every organ, 248 limbs of his body, and the person is really totally destroyed by this, but nevertheless, when the person is released from it, it leaves him totally. It leaves from all 248 limbs of his body. In other words, there's no remnant. There's no stain once a person is undone. דכתיב, והייתה עיד חרם, חרם בגימטריה 248 הבו, כשיוסד דכתיב, ברוגז לכם תזכור, לכם בגימטריה הכי הבו. And the proof for this is that the word cherem, Gematria, is 248, and that's from the pasuk in Yoshua. It says the city shall have a curse on it. So a curse enters into 248 limbs of the body. But when the person is released from the ban, then it says berogez, even in wrath, when the person is deserves this anger, rachem tizkor, remember mercy, and rachem is also 248. So when the person is when the rabbis are merciful to him and undo the ban, then it leaves him completely, and there is no remnant of the stigma. Amar Rav Yosef, Shedeh Shamta Agenubta de Kalba Bidida Avda. Rav Yosef says putting someone under excommunication has its own power. It's a curse. It's not just that socially people, that's a big thing, that socially people will not talk to him, but in addition, it will harm the person, because you can even put excommunication on the tail of a dog, that it's not going to know it's excommunicated and feel bad about it, but nevertheless, it will do its work. For example, there was a dog once that was eating all the shoes of the sages, but they didn't know what was causing. They see their shoes are all bitten up, so they made a ban. Whoever is eating our shoes should be banned. They thought maybe it's a person. In the end, it was this dog, and the tail of the dog caught fire and was burnt. And so you see that putting a ban on someone or something or even an animal will cause it to be cursed and cause it to be harmed, besides the social ramifications. One time there was this violent person, a thug, who was bothering the Torah sages. Rav Yosef says he's deserving of excommunication. He's doing this, acting like this. But the rabbi said, I'm afraid of him, right? right? He's like a mafia guy. If I go excommunicate him, he's going to shoot me. So he says, don't do it orally, like in public, and take a vote and all that. Write it down on a paper, and that way, do it in writing. This is kol sheken mistafina meineh. So Torah says, all the more so I put it in writing, then it's going to get around, and he's going to hear about it, and he's going to kill me. He says, no, take this, whatever you wrote, and put it in a jug, and put it in a cemetery. Point of a cemetery is that there's nobody around, so nobody will see it. And blow the shofar 1,000 times over the course of 40 days. Remember, we saw before that when someone's excommunicated, it's announced with a shofar blow, but here you're doing it in the middle of nowhere. So we did that. Azil v'avid hachi peka kada umit alama. And so as he's blowing the shofar day after day, one day that jug burst open, and at the same time this thug died. And so what is the reason that we sound shofarot when we ban someone? Because the word shipureh sounds like shenifra'in, that the person gets retribution for what they did. And so therefore you see that this excommunication works even though the person didn't even know they were excommunicated. And so no one knew. And so no one was distancing themselves from him socially, but nevertheless it worked just as a curse, just like with the tail of the dog. My tavra, what is the reason that when we blow the shofar, we blow like these broken blasts? That the shofar has the power with the excommunication to break even a tall building, even a strong person will take its effect. Whenever the rabbis look the wrong way at someone in anger because someone did something wrong, then that person will either come to death or come to poverty. So in other words, the curse of the rabbis is something to take very seriously. All right, that's the end of the Agadot, stories and laws about excommunication. And now we go back to the Mishnah. Mishnah said, we're talking about, in general, most people cannot shave on Chol Moed because they should have shaven beforehand. But if they were not able to cut their hair beforehand, for example, if they were in jail or away on a trip, then they are permitted. And here's another two cases, Nazir and Mesorah. Nazir and Mesorah, they are not permitted to cut their hair while they're in that state, while Nazir is a Nazir. But at the end of it, then they must cut their hair as part of their tahara process. So whenever you have a Nazir who ended his period of Nazirut, or Mesorah who's going from Tumah to become Tahor, if it should happen that date falls out on Chol Moed, they couldn't have cut their hair before, and now they need to cut their hair. So now they are allowed. Okay, so that's the case of the Mishnah. Now question. Is the case of their permission only when they had no chance to cut their hair before? Meaning, let's say someone was a Nazir for 30 days and the 30 days ended right in the middle of Chol Moed. Well, then they certainly had no chance to do it before. Or would you say it's permitted even if they did have a chance before? What if his 30 days ended on Erev Yom Tov? And so really he could have cut his hair Erev Yom Tov, but he didn't, and he was busy cooking and doing other things. Do we still permit him to do it on Chol Moed or not? Amar le Tanena kol elu shemru mutarin legalech b'moed b'shelo hayalem penai, aval hayalem penai asurim. So the answer is from a Braita. This is anyone that we said in the Mishnah is permitted to shave, cut their hair on during Chol Moed. That's only if they didn't have a chance before. But if they had a chance, then it's not allowed. For example, someone gets out of jail a couple of days before Yom Tov starts, so they have to cut their hair before Yom Tov starts. They can't cut their hair on the holiday. However, Nazir Mesorah af al pi shaya lehem penai mutarim. But Nazir Mesorah are exceptions to this rule. And even if they had a chance, even if the Nazir, his 30 days ended a couple of days before Yom Tov started, he really should have cut his hair before. Nevertheless, we permit him to cut his hair on Chol Moed because he cannot bring his korbanot until after he cuts his hair, and we don't want him to delay bring the korbanot. Mesorah also, even if he could have done it before, he became clean, he counted 7 days before Yom Tov started, and then he has to cut his hair and bring korbanot. Even if he didn't cut his hair when he could have, we nevertheless permit it on Chol Moed so we don't delay the korbanot. So therefore, yes, that's these two categories are more lenient than the other categories. Tana hakohen va'avel mutarin bigiluach. Okay, a kohen in general, a kohen who's serving in the Bet HaMikdash because it's his mishmar, it's his week to serve, may not cut his hair during that week. And the point was the same thing, that he should cut his hair before he starts, so that he'll look good and when he starts going to serve, and he may not do it during that time. And Avel also is not allowed to cut his hair while he's in mourning. Now, what if they end their time, the end of their time is during Chol HaMoed, so they are allowed to cut their hair during Chol HaMoed because they also could not have done it before. Okay, so let's analyze this case of this baraita. Hi Avel hechidami. What would be the case of the Avel? When did he stop becoming an Avel that you would say he's permitted? Okay, so see, Avel is an interesting case because when the holiday starts, it breaks the Avelut. So he's not actually going to be an Avel, not the 7 days anyway, during Chol HaMoed, right? It's not like the 7 days ends in the middle of Chol HaMoed and then he could shave because the holiday breaks the Shiva. If he finishes Shiva, then the holiday will break the Shiloshim, and so then he would be permitted to shave. So what case are we talking about that it would not be broken? Okay, let's say the 8th day of his Avelut was the day before the holiday started. So that means he had 7 days of sitting Shiva, and that's the end of the 7. And the 8th day would be the first day of his Shiloshim, right? Because Shiloshim starts right after the 7 finishes. That'll be the 8th day. And all that was on Erev Chag. So Erev Chag, he can take a haircut. Then he should have taken a haircut on that day. And if he didn't, then he doesn't have permission to do it on Chol HaMoed because he could have done it before. So that can't be the case. Or rather, it's the 8th day of his Avelut was on Shabbat, and that Shabbat was Erev Chag. And so therefore, that's the case. So the point is that he finished his Shiv'ah, and now he starts his Shiloshim. He can't shave, but that Shiloshim is Shabbat, so he can't shave on that day. And so even though the holiday will start and break the Shiloshim, so he's no longer an Avel, and he could shave, but happened to be Shabbat, so he can't shave because of Shabbat. So let's say that's the case. No, that case also doesn't work, because in that case you could have shaven Friday afternoon. Okay, there's a machloket we're going to see between Abba Shaul and the Chachamim. Abba Shaul says Miksat Hayom Kekulo. That's what we follow today. That on the 7th day, on the Shiva, the person, once he sits for a few minutes, can get up after that, and immediately the Shiloshim will start on the 7th day. So the 7th day serves both the end of the Shiva and the beginning of the Shiloshim. That's what Abba Shaul says. Chachamim, however, say that no, you have to sit Shiva the entire 7 days up till sunset on that 7th day, and Shiloshim only starts at the beginning of the 8th day. Okay, so this case that we just mentioned doesn't work because we say halachas like Abba Shaul, and therefore we have the person is sitting 7 days, and the 7 days ends Friday morning, because that's it, Miksat Hayom Kekulo, and then immediately the Shiloshim starts, and so that Friday is the beginning of the Shiloshim, and because the holiday is going to break the Shiloshim, therefore that person should already have shaven on Friday, and therefore would not be permitted to shave on Chol HaMoed. So that can't be the case. And even Chachamim, Modim Chachamim Labashol b'Shachar Shemini Shelo Yot b'Shabbat Erev Haregel Shemutar Legalech be'Erev Shabbat. And the sages actually agree with Abba Shaul in this case that when the 8th day is Shabbat, and that is Erev Haregel, so then that means according to Chachamim, he finishes his Shiva on Friday, and Shabbat would be the beginning of the Shiloshim. And so therefore, the holiday will come and break the Shiloshim. And in that case, the sages would agree that the person can take a haircut on Friday in anticipation of the holiday breaking the Shiloshim. And so therefore, both according to Bashul and according to Chachamim, the person would be permitted to shave on Friday. And since he can shave on Friday, he may not shave on Chol HaMoed. And so now we're back to square one. What is a case where an Avel would be permitted to shave on Chol HaMoed? Right? It has to be a case where he did not get a chance to shave beforehand. And here's the answer. It's when the seventh day of his Shiv'ah is Shabbat, and that Shabbat is also Erev Chag. And so in this case, because the Shiv'ah ends on Shabbat, he would not be able to shave on Shabbat. And that is Erev Chag, and so there's no chance for him to shave beforehand. Okay, this itself would be a subject of a machloket. Tana bara, the Tana of that baraita, the baraita that says that he's permitted to shave, Avel is permitted to shave. Savar la kaba Shaul would follow Abba Shaul. Part of the day is like the whole day, and therefore, since the Shiva ends on Shabbat, Yom Shvi ole lo lekan ulkan. That Shabbat, which is the seventh day, is both the end of the Shiva and also the beginning of the Shiloshim. And the holiday will come and break the Shiloshim, so that he's not in Shiloshim anymore. But since it's Shabbat, the Shabbat have anusu, but Shabbat, so he can't take a haircut. And in this case, we would not let him take a haircut on Friday because Friday is only the sixth day. So there's no way he could have shaven. He could have shaven on Friday. There's no way he could shave on Shabbat, even though that's the end of the Shiv'ah. And now the holiday comes and breaks the Shiloshim. So on Chol HaMoed, he's not in Shiloshim. He's not in Avel anymore. But it's the first chance he can get to shave. And that's what the Baraita was talking about, following Abba Shaul. However, our Mishnah does not mention this case, that an Avel can shave on Chol HaMoed. So it must be that our Mishnah disagrees with that Baraita and says an Avel may not shave, even in such a case. Why? And so rabbis say, no, Shiva has to be a full day. And therefore, in this case, the Shiva was on Shabbat, which is also Erev Chag. And so the person was in Shiva that entire day until the holiday started. And so therefore, when his Shiloshim only begins afterwards on the first day of the holiday. So therefore, the holiday does not break the Shiloshim. And so before the Avelut of Shiva does not end before the holiday starts, and that's why he's still an Avel in Shiloshim, and that's why he cannot shave on Chol HaMoed, because he's still in the Shiloshim, and only if it would break the Shiloshim he would be able to. So therefore our Mishnah says an Avel in such a case may not shave on Chol HaMoed, because he couldn't have shaven before, but nevertheless he's in Shiloshim now, so he cannot shave now. Okay, that's the case of Avel. Now the Baraita also mentioned that a Kohen who's during his Mishmar, Hai Kohen Hechidami, what would be a case that the Kohen's he's serving as a Kohen, and it would end during the holiday. If his mishmar usually ended on Shabbat, right? That's when they would switch over from one to the other. And so let's say that the holiday then started on the next day on Sunday. Then he could have cut his hair on the eve of the festival. So no, it must be that he ended his mishmar in the middle. So that means that Yom Tov started, let's say, Wednesday or Thursday. And so when he ends his mishmar sometime on Shabbat, that's the middle of Chol HaMoed. And so because he could not shave before Yom Tov started, because he was in the middle of his mishmar, therefore for when he ends his mishmar, which is Chol HaMoed, then he should be allowed to. That must be the case. Now, our Mishnah didn't mention this exception. So according to our Mishnah, a Kohen in such a case may not shave. Why? So we saw Mishnah in Masechet Sukkah that says for the 3 big holidays of the year, all the mishmarot come and serve together. And they, not that they serve, but they all share in the offerings and the showbread. So they all benefit from everything. So in that sense, they are actually continuing their mishmar, and so therefore none of them can shave. So so too, this Kohen, who happens to be that is his official week. And so then the holiday comes, and then therefore he continues. His mishmar does not end on Shabbat, but continues till the end of the holiday, because even though the next week is not his mishmar, because the holiday, all the mishmarot come and participate together. And therefore he would not be able to shave the whole time, because he's still serving as one of the Kohanim. And none of the Kohanim would be able to shave during that time period. And so that's our Mishnah that says, no, a Kohen may not shave during a Chol HaMoed, but the Tana of the Baraita that permits it would say, even though, yes, it's true, he can join together with benefiting from the Lechem HaPanim and other korbanot, because all the mishmarot come and enjoy it. Nevertheless, that's not official. His own personal mishmar of serving, of doing all the service, ended on Shabbat, which is Chol HaMoed, and that therefore he could not have shaven before, and that person is permitted to shave on Chol HaMoed, and that's the case that he was talking about. Okay, Tenor Banan. Kol elu shamru mutarin legalech b'moed, mutarin legalech b'mei evlan. That all the exceptions that we had, that we saw, that said that someone is allowed to shave on Chol HaMoed. For example, someone just got out of jail on Chol HaMoed, they're allowed to shave because they couldn't have done it before. The same permission is true for an Avel. Let's say someone was Avel, and while they were in jail, and they got out of jail in the middle of their Avelut, on the third, fourth day of their Avelut, that person can shave. Because they weren't able to, and they were in jail for who knows how long, and so that person is allowed to shave even in the middle of Avelut. That's what this Baraita says. Hold on, V'hatanya Asurim. We have another Baraita that says the same case and says it's not permitted. So now we have two contradictory Baraitot that we'd like to resolve. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Shela, Kitanya Hacha Mutarin Beshetechafuhu Avelav. And the first Baraita that says it's permitted, that's talking about a different case. When a person is an Avel, one time after another, that he loses one loved one, and he's in the middle of his 30 days not shaving, and then sometime on the 25th day, another loved one dies. And now he's an Avel back to back, right? 30 days after 30 days. And that in that case, that person would be permitted to shave. Now we ask about that. Hold on. If he's a veil back to back, then you don't need to tell me, oh, it was Chol HaMoed and something else. If just that case by itself, he would be permitted. Because the Baraita says, if a person was an Avel one time after another, and now his hair is very heavy and it looks very bad, so he can lighten the hair with a razor, and he can wash his garments in water. So you see that it doesn't have to be that he got out of jail also. Right? We don't need any further reasons for him to be permitted. Just this by itself makes it permitted. Okay, hi itmar Allah. No, this Baraita, look carefully at it. Amar Rav Chisda betar velo b'misparayim b'mayim velo b'netev velo b'ahal. If it's one avelut, one back to back, if it's two avelut back to back, then it's permitted to trim the beard with a razor, but not, that's an abnormal way, but not with scissors, which is a normal way. Yeah, you can wash clothes just in water, but not using detergent or soap. So if it was back to back, then you have to do an unusual way. If it's back to back and there's another reason, like the person was also in jail and couldn't have done it before, then that's the case where the Baraita says it's permitted to totally shave and wash in a normal way. And by the way, we learn from here that an Avel in general, a regular case, is not allowed to launder clothing. All right, that's that case. Tenor Banan. Amru asur legalech b'moed, kach asur litosi ponayim b'moed, diber Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef matir. And so this Baraita says that just like a person is not allowed to cut hair during Chol HaMoed, so too one is not allowed to cut nails right? You could have cut your nails before. That's the Yehuda. Yehuda says no, it's permitted. You can't cut your hair, but you're permitted to cut your nails. Right? People cut their nails right away, and they grow fast and all that, so it's permitted. We have the same machloket regarding an avel. He is not permitted to shave during it while he's a mourner, but he's permitted to cut his nails. That's what the Yehuda says. The Yehuda is lenient on this also. So Yehuda says no cutting nails, not on Chol Moed and not for Avel. Yehuda says both are permitted. What is the halacha? So someone who's in mourning should not cut his nails. You're allowed to cut your nails. That's ula. But Shemuel Amar, halacha ke'Rabbi Yosef b'Moed u'be'avel. Shemuel disagrees and says halacha is like Rabbi Yosef in both cases, both during Chol Moed and also in Avel are permitted to cut their nails. Amen ve'amen.